coming to you from sunny Denver, Colorado. Get ready for your weekly dose of unscripted conversation all about the housing industry in the Centennial State. Although their specialty is in mortgages, in this show they are transcending lending. And now, your host, the most unconventional guys in conventional lending, the Mortgage In-Laws.
All right, well, welcome to the show. Got another exciting one here for you today. I'm Brent Blankenburg, and as always, I've got my compadre here, Dylan Herrera. Dylan, how you doing today, buddy?
Doing good. We did want to talk about one interesting thing that we learned in 2016. So with that, probably one of the biggest learning curves that happened for me was the cash out refinance that we had and a power of attorney, that you actually cannot use a power of attorney on a cash out refinance. So we had the husband leave to Alaska, and it took a good week to actually find a notary out there for him to sign. So that was something interesting that I learned in 2016.
Yeah, that was a fun one. The old power of attorney on a cash out refinance. You know, the one good thing about it we can say is that we couldn't have closed it. There's no way we could have closed it before he left for Alaska anyways. So even though we didn't know that going into it, there was nothing that was going to save us on that one, unless we just pushed back the closing. But yeah, it was interesting. He's works on an oil tanker, and he's out in Cold Bay, Alaska. Population 200 people. There's one notary in town, and she just didn't want to return our calls or emails. So we just had notaries chasing him all over Alaska as he went from port to port. But we closed, and clients were happy at the end of the day, so that was a good one. Always something to learn. And we also have here today our commander-in-chief at the office. No, not Donald Trump. We don't have the Donald here, but Aaron Ninness, who is one of my bosses and good dude. This guy's real interesting. Has some serious insight on the industry due to his background, and I'll just give you a quick briefing on that. So his dad, they run our office that Dylan and I work out of at New American Funding. His dad's been in the business now a little over 30 years, recruited me a few years ago. So that's how I got tied in with these guys. But with Tom, which is Aaron's dad, being in the business since before he was born, Aaron's grown up around this industry his whole life, and actually sold a house as a realtor, as a licensed realtor here in Colorado before he graduated high school. So got all kinds of things to say. How'd that transaction go?
It was probably rough, I imagine, for the clients. I probably think I did a good job, but
yeah. Do you remember anything about it in particular?
I remember a couple things. One, I remember how it's kind of funny. I got into the business and I was still poor and in high school, and everyone talked about previewing properties. You would drive out, you would go look at them before you would dare bring a client there. And I remember at that point I was too broke to actually afford the gas to drive out to see properties that I didn't know if they were actually going to be something interested for a client or not. So for that one, it was like, what I remember is the houses we looked at, we walked into this one and it was beautiful. It was a flip. It had just been redone. It was a flip from an estate, I think. The kids actually did it, but wood floors, nice countertops, everything perfect, and it was so easy. And so I kind of got into it. And it wasn't that one that was memorable, but it was then that attitude I took into the next one. And the next client I took out was for an investment property, and he was looking for rentals. And it was a friend of mine's in high school's father that just was giving me a chance. And just as before, I was like, there's no need to preview properties. You could just go out. And we actually went out and saw what I would consider some true, I hate to use the word slum, but it was just horrible areas of town that, really I didn't feel the most comfortable even being in. And so I hadn't previewed any of these properties. Here I am walking in. I'm 18 years old, still in high school. I've got a friend's father. And the first door we knock on of the tenants, it was answered by a 4-year-old girl, somewhere around 4 years old, feeding her little brother and her little sister, who were just a little bit younger than them. Dad was passed out, face down in the kitchen, and Mom was passed out on the couch. And we walked in there. They let us. Here are these little kids that let two strangers into their home. They knew nothing about us, and parents were out. And that was kind of my first real lesson I got was like those two stark differences, and it just reminded me of how different and privileged and awesome my world was compared to other folks. And I don't know, it gave me a way different appreciation too for the real estate business and what really kind of quantifies it. It's everything from the bare essentials of almost a yurt on an acre, living off the grid in like Sterling, Colorado, all the way up to $1 million skyscrapers and everything in between. So that's probably what I remember the most as a young kid. And again, growing up in Parker, life was not the worst in the world for us. We usually had what we needed, no problem, and it was a real good idea that even though I had got my license and I was trying to be a big boy, there was still plenty to learn about the real world.
Yeah, it's so interesting because I am a big proponent of people having experiences in order to be educated in life, or just to get a little bit of perspective sometimes. So I think a lot of times even traveling, as opposed to maybe going to college right after high school, traveling can give you those experiences where you really learn some things. So that's interesting that you were outside of school, even though you were at the institutionalized age, but whether it's at lunch maybe you were taken to show houses, or after school mainly, I'm sure, but getting those life experiences were really the things that kind of taught you.
And I think it bleeds through into probably how we all do business now. Even our office, we have a good group of folks that really specialize in helping the underserved. I mean, New American as a company itself helps underserved, but the products that we really talk about in our sales meetings on how we can assist people with the dream of home ownership, it's not a bunch of people who are looking out there for helping $1 million home loans. The jumbo term isn't thrown around a ton in our office. We do them when they come up, but we really all have started at the basics of helping folks just get their first home. So
yeah, man, that's interesting. As you say that, we've never consciously talked too much as an office about, I guess we do promote that as a company-wide, helping the underserved, but it just feels like there are clients I've never even too much thought about them being underserved, but as you mentioned it, the guy I worked for previously in the mortgage business, who's been in the business for 15 years, he's certainly not focusing on the people who we are now. It's interesting to look back now and kind of see how the average mortgage person who has been in the business over a decade, they have a huge array of people they can work with, just based on how much time they've been in the business. And most of the time, I would say they choose to work with people who are 20% down buyers, over 700 credit score, the really straightforward.
Which is interesting because, I remember one of the very first loans I did was for a gal who was buying, it was a HUD repo, it was a condo, it was a 1-bed, 1-bath, and it was $62,500 was the contract price. It was back in probably, I'm going to say 2011, 2012. And it was probably a 20-year-old gal who had saved up enough while going to school for vet tech and stuff just for down payment, which we're talking, that was back in the $1,000 down days. You used to have a $1,000 down HUD program. So we get her in, she's in there for nothing, and doubled her money on that, which is a good story about real estate investing. But the real side is that her parents came to me and said, Aaron, you took so good of care of our daughter on what we know is essentially kind of a waste of time deal, right? You're not going to really make a lot of money. This isn't something you're going to say, hey, I won the lottery on. But because you did such a good job there, those folks have referred me nonstop. Every person they can think of in their offices, I've done personal refinances for them, their other kids, their uncles, grandparents. So helping one person at that little tiny deal that people don't want probably still led to several million in business. So the reality is people know people, and if you're willing to give the time of day to someone who most people are going to say no to, they don't just hang out with those people. We're all connected.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I've definitely found that the people that we'll say are harder to get qualified are typically more thankful and a lot more enjoyable to work with. And I think at the end of a transaction, you can definitely have very different experiences of, gosh, I really be doing this. I worked this hard for, to try to help someone out, and to them just kind of be upset about having to collect too many documents for us or something. it can just go very different ways, I'd say.
And at the end of the day, people forget the key point that the reason we're asking for it is because somewhere along the line, someone lied, right? Someone ruins it for everyone. That's why there's a lock on your front door. Somewhere along the line, someone didn't respect that was personal property. And that's all we work on. We're not trying to ruin anyone's day, but at the end of the day, the amount that's on your W-2 doesn't change how I'm going to ask for documents. There's no privy treatment for someone who's making $2 million or $20,000 a year.
Yeah.
Same business, same respect.
Well, and I can totally understand it as well, because I even remember getting into the mortgage business, and it took me a good year probably to understand where an underwriter's coming from. You know, and that's totally where our borrowers are. They're not doing mortgages in real estate every day. So, but, you know, at some point it finally clicked, I think, in my head that, you know, there's a reason the underwriter's asking for this. It's never personal against me. It's never personal against the borrower. It's they're looking at a document here. This is what they have in front of them.
Yeah.
And, you know, because Fannie Mae or Freddie Mac or FHA or VA says that they have to document it a certain way, that's the only reason they're asking for it. So, you know, part of it is I probably could do a better job of explaining to my borrowers that piece right there, that, you know, we're going to be asking for a ton of things, but it's because the guidelines call for it. Someone lied, like you said.
That's it.
So jumping back real quick, you were talking about experience before college, and so you didn't go to college like myself. Was that a decision by you, or did your dad kind of advise you to get into the mortgage industry? And
No, that's a super. No, I think like any parents, my parents would have loved for me to go to college, and mine's probably even more unique that I actually got a full ride scholarship based on grades and ACTs and everything. But I would be lying if I said that I was a perfect student. I definitely had a lot of fun, and although I was very outgoing on entrepreneurial activities, I was just all around outgoing. And honestly, I knew if I graduated, I didn't know what I wanted to do. Actually, back at that time, the one thing I was certain is I did not want to do loans. I did not want to go into my dad's business, right? I wanted to go into the real estate side because I love that. But and I started working for him at 16. But anyways, the reality was that I knew that I was not going to get an actual education. I would have had a lot of fun if I went to college, and that's about it. So I just made the decision to get out there and kind of have at it and not waste time. I'm fortunate because I think that student loans are a big discouragement to a lot of people. I can't help but think that there's folks who are out there who not just buying a home, but maybe they have a good idea. They're an inventor. Maybe they have something that could change the world, and they would love to pursue the passion of creating that item, whatever it is, and bring it to market. But with $60,000, $70,000, $120,000 in student loan debt hanging them, how can they take another $50,000 out to bring that item to market? You know what I mean? So it's for me. I think my parents look back at it, and obviously it's worked out well. We have a great relationship. I see my dad every day. We still work together. Do I want to go back to college? Yeah, I'd love to get a degree because I think that's important. But I also think that we've done a large disservice in talking about what kind of education people should be receiving. Right now in Denver, we have a huge issue with trades, skills, right? People who can lay carpet, do tile, and there's an art to it, and they can make good money doing those things, but we have a severe shortage because at the end of the day, engineers, lawyers, those are the people we talk about. But you know what? Going back to loans, I've done lots of loans for people in trades who make great livings, have good credit, little debt, have nice cars, nice things. It's just we got to change perspective. I got fortunate. That's all I know.
Yeah, it seems like there could be a flipping back going on here from the trades, you know, making a lot of money to, it's not that they make bad money now, but it's just considered by a lot of high school kids like a career you don't want to get into. But, you know, as it becomes more of a supply and demand issue where we just don't have enough tradespeople out there, then those salaries, you know, and hourly pay really start to go up, and they become sexy again, you know. Maybe then high school kids are like, I'm not going to college, you know, I'm going to go learn to be an electrician. I'm going to be making money in no time while you're paying money, you know. It'll be interesting to see.
It's a reality of the progression. And truth be told, a lot of things that, an electrician, a robot can't be. Laying tile, a robot can't be. I mean, those trades are not inherently getting design. I mean, you think about an engineer, and how many engineers are designing items that eventually will probably put them out of a job.
Yeah.
You know, and it's part of progression of where we go, and there'll be new kinds of engineers that come out with new technologies and always designing. But I think there's almost a limiting factor in some ways to some of those that working with your hands you just can't.
Totally. So getting back to the student loans thing real quick, because we see tons of finances, so we see tons of student loans.
Yeah.
I was just talking to my girlfriend last night, and she's telling me how two of her friends, we were discussing how she wants to have her loans paid off by the time she's 30, her student loans. And then she starts talking about, some of her friends that she knows, or all the ones she mentioned, none of them are actually making payments on their student loans. They're just constantly putting them into deferment.
Right.
And we see that all the time in our business. And what kind of problem are we creating here, as a society with this situation?
Yeah, I mean, so we have a couple different basics, right? On a loan level, the biggest issue I see right now is current guidelines say you got to use 1% of the outstanding balance or document the real payment. Given when this guideline was written, we're talking about a time when prime has been at zero. We have effectively been stuck at 3.5%, or 3.25% rather. Last December in 2015, we had our first increase to 3.5%, 3.25% this last December, and certainly the dot matrix, the plot line that the Fed chairman uses to kind of take a vote of everyone of how many future increases they see. We're talking 3 or 4 this year is what they ultimately would like to do. Maybe 2, 3, 4, somewhere in there. But I would say 3 is a good average of how many quarter price improvements we're going to see to the prime. Well, that's a big deal because although most of the student loans we have right now are fixed, I can't help but think we're going to have an increase on those loan rates. Is there going to be a time where 1% is no longer going to be sufficient? And due to the rate environment, we have a requirement at 1.2% that we're using. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So that's a factor, right? Our guideline's going to change. But compare that to the facts that we're not seeing much wage growth right now. Wages are not actively going as fast as inflation is, right? Wage growth isn't going to meet inflation, especially if we get up to 2% inflation like they want. Housing, right, is going off the charts, 3 to 11%, depending where you are in the market. So here we are having students who are going to be paying more for their education from rising costs. They're going to have a higher interest rate that they're paying on those, paying higher bills by the time they get out of school, but going into a job that probably hasn't seen the same equal growth. If I look at a real estate investor, I buy $1 million commercial space partially for the cash flow at, let's say, 5-6% net after all my expenses. But part of the beauty of real estate is that maybe I only put 25% down, so I leverage $750,000 at 5%, and it's appreciated at 8%. So I have a 3% positive growth on my investment, not even considering what I make in cash flow. Okay, we'll use that same formula. Now you're in the school system. You come out with $100,000 in debt. You're going to make $50,000, and your bills are $2,000. Well, a month versus $50,000. So let's say 60, so $5,000. Well, come next year, you make what? $51,000, but your bills went to $2,500. Mm-hmm. We have an unequal growth. All the while, they're letting the interest stack up, and you start looking at it. If you're not going to get a wage with your degree, that the growth of that income is going to be ahead of not only what you're paying in interest, but also the growth of inflation, you're not making any money on that education. So the reality is, if inflation is going to be at 2%, if growth of costs and housing is 5%, that's 7%. If you're paying 6% on interest, you need a job that appreciates at 13% annually on income in order to truly be receiving a benefit. That's a tall return. If you were doing that on Wall Street, you'd be a genius. So wow. I think it's going to be a little complicated, and obviously that's not the rule for everything. But again, going back to a trade, if you're able to get an education for $20,000 from a local community college, you can pay that off real quick, and your job is going to grow at those. So,
yeah, and you're already seeing it in a place here like Denver, where housing is huge right now, and there's a lot of demand out there for people wanting work done. I talked to a friend of ours, a realtor, the other day who just flipped a house, said he won't be doing it again anytime soon. And he said basically it was mainly because the contractors just don't need the work right now. So, the contractors hold all the power right now, which, so you're already kind of seeing that switch to where...
That surprises me in December.
Yeah.
I feel like that's when people need more work.
An interesting thing, if you could draft up or find out if they publish just general permits for different, electrical permits or whatever. But yeah, for counties, mainly focusing on remodeling, right? Could you go to Jefferson County here in the Denver metro area and say, tell me how many permits you've done every month? But I bet you would see a trend of it going. We're hard though because our economy is doing so well. There's parts of America, and I think the election with Trump definitely pointed out that there are places that are not happy with how things are going. Denver specifically is such a purple place. We have so many Democrats in the area, and I think a lot of people feel that way because of how prosperous our area is. So that in turn is having people out there really getting remodels done, basements, bathrooms, etc., and work's done. My brother is a superintendent for a local builder here in town, and they build a very nice product, but trying to line up just framers in such a way that you can rely on them for more than 3 houses is a serious problem. They know that probably by the time they finish framing that 3rd home, someone's probably offered them a higher wage just to walk off that site, plus a little sign-on bonus to go start knocking out some other homes.
So what's the licensing process like on these different types of trades? So if you're just somebody who wants to come in and do tile work or something relatively basic, something that's not messing with the structural integrity of the house or a major electrical issue, do you know much about like what you would have to do to come to this house, knock on this door, and say, hey, I'm a tiling business, I want to tile?
Tiling, I don't think you have anything.
Nothing.
Yeah, when it comes to flooring and stuff like that, you're good. I think HVAC, electrical, plumbing, and general contractors are all going to be licensed. One of the most common phrases we see in additional provisions on a contract in the real estate world is licensed contractor to certify a roof or licensed contractor to replace roof. Well, in the Denver metro area, you need a permit to change a roof with a final inspection. But the people installing that roof or anything involving that roof, there is no licensing requirements. You and I are mandatory update providers for real estate agents in 2017. And one of the things they talk about is ambiguous additional provisions. That's one of the things we're educating real estate agents on. And that's one of those ambiguous ones. We're saying get a licensed person, but there is no license. You're writing a contract to require a field or a certification that is not actually available.
So you're saying roofers?
There is no
licensing?
licensing in roofing. No. You could be a licensed general contractor putting on a roof, but there's nothing that prevents me, Aaron Ninness, knows nothing about roofs other than what I know from the replacements we've done with in a transaction, to open up an LLC for $50 on the state of Colorado, set up a credit line with a local roofing company, get a crew that they recommend, and knock on some doors in a hailstorm and start slinging some roofs. There's nothing that prevents that.
Wow. Because I'm sure I've seen the whole licensed roofer piece in my contracts previously as well.
You see lawsuits. Now, what you see when you see the signs is usually bonded and insured. So when you see an advertisement for a roofer, you don't have someone who's saying, I'm licensed. They all say they're bonded and insured, which just means that they're insured for liabilities if they cause a problem, knock down a tree into your home. And then they're also bonded in the sense that if you called foul play, I charged you for a 50-year roof, you found out I gave you a 30-year shingle, you sue me for the difference, my E&O or my bond, I'm sorry, errors and omissions rather, in that case, E&O insurance would pay the claim, and then they come back after me, right? So that's really what you're talking about, on the insurance side, but nothing. So those plumbing, electrical, and HVAC, I think, are the main ones. And then I think the difference is a general contractor could just answer questions when they have a licensed general contractor. When you have an inspector doing a drywall inspection, making sure there's so many screws per stud or however their matrix are.
Okay, so if somebody's getting a whole kitchen done, is
Yeah.
that typically something that you'd have a licensed general contractor bid on because they're doing probably some lighting, electricals type stuff, some plumbing.
That's
possibly,
well, but see, but you could have a guy who's just super good at everything who gets a licensed person to do those trades.
Or separate people coming to do the separate trades rather
Yeah,
than
and you
having
could be a general contractor without being a licensed general contractor.
So, I guess I'm thinking if somebody wanted to start a remodeling company, let's say, and they weren't actually going to do a whole lot of the work, more so they were going to kind of,
Yes.
assemble a team of experts
Correct.
who they're the sales arm of this whole thing.
Right.
Would that person have to be a general contractor in order to, or I mean, I guess it's specific.
It's probably state by state, I would imagine, right? But I would say no, they don't have to be a licensed general contractor. A good example of that is HomeAdvisor.com, right? That is a startup specifically for the point of allowing someone to GC their deal by using predetermined screened folks that they are then selling the leads to those folks.
Interesting. So I'm a little bit behind on that one there. My idea is a little.
Oh, did I just squash it? That was your next great idea.
No, we're thinking about doing something on our kitchen before too long, and so I don't know. I'm just curious how.
I mean, if you're talking about just knocking down, backsplash, taking out, most of that stuff, and then prettying it up, I couldn't see any reason why you would need to go that route. And in fact, a great agent I work with has a handyman that he's just a handyman. He's bonded and insured, so he's covered, but he's just a handyman. Incredible. And I would let him do anything at my home, from simple projects like you're talking about, and I've seen his work there, from outdoor patios to kitchens to whatever, and it's good. So
Interesting. That's even another. I don't know.
well, it's what, licensing is one of those things like doctor, right? So as an example, someone who goes to med school and graduates with a D average, what do they call that person? Doctor.
Yeah.
Right? You're still a doctor. You still graduated. People, when they go there and they talk to their pediatrician, how many do you think say, oh, you're a doctor, what was your grade point average? And that's the same thing on a licensed contractor. Yeah, right? I mean, because they're still a doctor. There's nothing that precludes them from going out, starting a business. They're licensed. They pass the exam. Go forward, right? Same with lawyers or anything else. So you could still have a license. I mean, I could be a licensed contractor, and I could probably sell a good spin on how I'm going to do your kitchen. But I feel like those city commercials where the guy's like, it's an honest conversation with people getting remodeled. He's like, so it'll be, 6-7 weeks over what I tell you. We're going to break the budget. I'm going to leave your home a disaster.
Oh my God.
I feel like that's kind of a reality. I don't know.
It's interesting. So, going back real quick, you were talking about just Colorado being a prosperous state as far as the growth that we've seen in the past 5-7 years. So, with that, how do you think marijuana is going to change that, being legalized in other states?
I think we're probably 3 months out from seeing initial policy from the new government coming in, right? The biggest thing that's going to go into all this, not to get into politics, but we do have a full Republican government at this point. Now, a lot of what they traditionally say is leave it to the states, and if that is actually what we're going to do, then I see a lot of prosperous growth. I've seen. I'm a proponent to it because. I think that marijuana's done a lot of good for the state. We've been able, gosh, you drive down, it's annoying as no other. You drive around right now and you see construction everywhere, but a lot of that construction was probably paid for from things like that. I know our schools have more computers in them, so for us, I see it positive. Here's some facts, though. Fremont County is a good example. Fremont County's #1 job increase has been in the marijuana industry. What makes Fremont County very interesting is simply in the fact that they allow outdoor growing. And so we see, people going out there, and actually the first $1 million crop ever produced was in Fremont County. That's good for Colorado. Where it comes over to the real estate world, I think we're going to start to see some serious questions with the feds. Not necessarily, hey, we're going to let them regulate it, but what would preclude a Fannie Mae, a Freddie Mac, and FHA to say, we know Fremont County is a outdoor legalized grow area. Is it going to make it more restrictive on a USDA loan, which all of Fremont County is pretty much USDA loan eligible? what would stop me then from being a home buyer to say, I'm going down there buying this 10-acre plot just because I like it, I've got a job down there, working as a W-2 employee, so they are legally allowed to, but at the same time, now they're going to use that 10 acres. At what point do we start saying the potential to use that as a income-producing activity that is not legitimate to the federal... Boy, does that get out of hand real quick. Man. So, I think marijuana in Colorado is going to keep us successful. The interesting thing that I can't stand people saying, though, if weed wasn't legalized, we wouldn't have so much, shortage of homes or everyone moving here. And the reality is, Hickenlooper's done an amazing job at selling us, right? We've seen Panasonic move to Colorado. Charles Schwab built a huge, beautiful, area there. We just found out BP is moving their headquarters to Denver. Mm-hmm. We've got Arrow Electronics moved their entire accounting department here. These are Fortune 5, level 3, blah, blah, blah. The list goes on. And they're not coming here because of weed. I don't think Charles Schwab sat there and said, okay, guys, we have 5 cities we can look at and one smokes pot. That's not how they pitch it. So for us, we have a lot of positive things, and if we could keep that momentum going, look, these are high-paying jobs too. These aren't low income, moderate income. These are high-paying jobs. A lot of 6-figure people moving here, and do they spend money? They do. That's why we see so many new BMW dealerships and all Mercedes. I think it's a good thing, and I don't understand the big deal about people worrying about it. In fact, if other states were smart, they would embrace this and do the same thing we did and use that tax revenue to try and support, better schools, better roads, etc. The stuff that we've fallen short on for 20 years now.
Well, we're seeing a lot more now, right? I mean, this last election, I don't know the numbers here exactly, but maybe you could look that up. But now a lot of states
2 or 3 states, I think, were added.
Yeah, 2 or 3 recreational, and now it's almost up to, I think, half.
37 or something. I thought it was like to me, when I heard it, it had to be in the 30-something that have medical marijuana. Yeah. And it was pretty alarming when I saw that, how much had...
28 states.
Okay, yeah, so we're over half, though.
So but like you said, you look at places like, one that I hear about a lot is Boise, Idaho, how it's just this awesome little city that's up and coming. And I mean, I don't think Idaho weed's legal there. There's
I would doubt it.
There's great little spots all over this country that are really starting to see some growth in the last few years, and it's because people are not as stagnant as they used to be. People aren't, maybe 20 years ago, if you were born somewhere in small town Kansas, you'd probably have a lot more propensity to stay there forever. But with just the internet, the connectivity of people, the ease of transportation, people want to go to these hot spots, and
I think there's also a need to disconnect, right? We are so heavily integrated and connected in our daily lives from sunrise to sunset. Horrible fact I just heard. Average human in America is with their cell phone 22 hours a day. They sleep with them next to them and stuff like that, which thank God I'm not that way. We plug them in and we go to bed. But for me, I can't leave Colorado because I mountain bike. I need those trails, right? So I think the Denver area provides a super connected, awesome, so much to do. But at the same time, I'm 30 minutes away from getting out of Dodge. I can, within 30 minutes of where I'm sitting, lose cell phone reception, right? I could be in a canyon that has biking, rafting, fishing within 30 minutes of where I am, and I could also be downtown for a show in 30 minutes.
Speaking of canyons, have you been through Elk Creek Canyon up near our new place in Pine?
So Elk Creek up by Staunton National Park. I went fat biking there yesterday.
No kidding.
Or on Monday. Did 20 miles out. Yep.
Nice.
Went out to, there's that half dome looking rock, which is called Chimney Rock back there. And
they got all
the falls.
Rocks,
yeah, they're all
frozen.
frozen. Yeah, absolutely. Super cool, man.
Do they have ice fishing?
There is
not ice fishing, I'm sorry. Ice climbing?
You know what? There's a technical climb section, so I'd imagine so. But the falls is 100% frozen right now.
Yeah.
So I'd imagine. But there's also one up 119, up Clear Creek.
Okay.
Do you have a desire to do that?
By Third
Ice
Tunnel.
climbing?
Yeah.
I did it once. It was a good time.
If you're gonna do it, you gotta just bite the bullet, hop in the car, drive 6 hours down to Telluride. They have an entire wall that turns to ice. It's over a football lengths long. Okay,
Wow.
the city bought it from a private person, and now it's integrated as one of their public parks. So they have
Oh, wow,
a
that's cool.
full with built-in lines. They build it up every year. They have world championship ice climbing competitions there. So if you're going to do it, go down to Telly and
Yeah.
Silverton, Telly, Durango. You can spend a couple
Where are
weeks
those?
out there.
Where are the ice castles out here?
I've never even seen one.
I don't know
Oh,
about
I didn't
those.
You know who would
I'll
know
look
is my
over.
wife. She would know.
Totally no. I did go ice climbing. We just bought one of like the Groupons or something. It was down in Colorado Springs area a few years ago. It was just like a 4-hour thing. It was fun. Probably one of my favorite things about climbing is getting out, being in my flip flops, and enjoying the sunshine while I'm out there. So I don't know. Maybe do some more of it, but I don't know. This guy does a lot of fat biking. Is that what you call it? Snow biking?
I call it snow biking, but
Fat
yeah,
biking sounds better.
It's fat biking.
Yeah.
Fat biking. That's a style of bike.
Yeah. Well, also on that same note, I think you had some extra cold weather biking gear that you were gonna maybe pass along to your friend over here on the other side of the table. So, just a friendly reminder.
I got plenty. I got plenty.
So I was talking about the other side of Elk Creek, though, on the other side of 285. Have you been to the?
You're talking north side.
Yeah.
That is the north side.
Well, no, sorry, I'm talking south side. Well,
South side. Well, heading down towards Buffalo Creek.
Exactly.
Okay, so how far? There's what's the little town between Pine and Buff Creek that has it's got like a shop inside a train. There's like a train and then a little cabin with a restaurant.
I think that might be Zoka's, unless you're talking
think it
about,
is.
which is in Pine, I believe.
This is down from Pine. So Pine 285, you're going to head south on Pine, which, I mean, that wraps all the way
that's
out.
Pine You're talking about Pine Junction. So when you get to 285,
Oh, okay, that's actual Pine
Junction.
down there.
Pine, it's just the surrounding area is called Pine for some reason, but it's actually. But all right, so it sounds like you haven't been down that road. You must go, man. If you go between 285 to whatever that Buffalo Creek Road is there, because Buffalo Creek actually cuts back. Take that down. There's actually a eatery in the canyon, but you're deep. You're definitely out of cell phone signal.
Well, are you talking about like down by like the Foxton where the Platts are?
Foxton.
Foxton is a little town that there was a little fire. It's the back road that goes to Buffalo Creek. So it starts in Conifer right after the Bradley station.
Okay.
And that cuts under, but that goes to the South Platte, and then if you continue on that goes to the North Platte into the North Fork. If you ever hear people talk about the North Fork Hotel, that is where the old hotel is. It's creepy as all get up. I mean, like, serious rapey vibes, but...
What is the name of that place? No, that's not the one.
Okay.
You'll have to check it out. It's like and anybody in Colorado who likes a nice drive, it's not a real long drive to get through that canyon, but you go through there's houses all throughout the canyon. So if you drive slowly and you're looking around, you'll just see houses tucked throughout this canyon the whole way. And then at the end of the canyon, when you just getting to Pine, there's actually a little, I believe it's a state park area or but
So
I'm
you're talking about
drawing a
Decker's
blank
Road
on
here?
it. I don't know. We'll have to. I'll get back to you on that one. It'll come to me at some point in time. So to get back to, so you started as a realtor. Obviously, you're not a realtor anymore, and I might have done a poor job of introducing you originally. But you are our branch manager. Do mortgages now and do them well for a long time. So when did you actually make the switch over from real estate to loans?
Well, so real estate to loans actually came through a couple things. I actually ended up just trying a bunch of different things in the real estate world. I did some hard money financing, helped with financing a white quartz mine in Wyoming, so learned a lot about mineral rights and the studies that are involved with testing white silica, which silica is what they cover electric boards with. It's got super low resistance, so it carries a signal extremely well, and the more pure the white quartz, the higher the content of silica, and that they can glaze on. So they crush it, refine it, spray it onto chips to give them that coating that you see on a computer chip. Anyways, this was a super pure plant. It had about 4 billion with a B worth of quartz coming out the ground on like an old volcanic tube. It's pretty cool.
Wow.
Did some shallow gas wells in Kansas. Did an oil well in Nacogdoches, Texas, as well, some financing, and did some investing in there. Kind of did through that. What in the end came around was just a realization that, I guess in some ways, that, although I didn't like growing up what my dad's business was of loans, I realized, I just knew so much about it, and my comfortability and everything were there, that I really, it just worked. And one day, I sat there with my dad, and he's like, why don't you just, come back and work with me directly again, and let's, see what we could do together. And I really just dug it. It was just good. It felt much more purposeful to me, I guess, in that sense. And I started on the operations side, which was a good thing. Operations is horribly underpaid, unfortunately, although it's gotten much better. We definitely have increased how we pay them, which is great. But at that time, it was still pretty low. And I guess for me, the income wasn't a big deal. It was just having that learning purpose. All of a sudden, though, flash forward to 2012, and at this point, I've really grown in my knowledge. I'm doing processing. I know underwriting real well, operations management. I went and got my license to be a loan officer, and a friend of mine came to me and said, Aaron, I'd like to buy my first home. I'd like to buy a condo. And so we go, and I help him buy the condo, and this is back in September of 2012. And I go to the closing, and the closing was great, and his agent was this property manager who gave $1,000 rebate of her commission as like a gift, back to the borrower for choosing her. Not someone I was going to do business with, not a heavy hitter, not someone I wanted to align myself with. But the other agent was this listing agent. She was just this bubbly sweetheart of a gal, and she was like, Aaron, this has been the greatest deal I've had in so long. It's just everything went smooth. I haven't had this in a while. Can I send you some clients? And of course, here I am, like, yes, like, oh no, I'm fine. I've got time. I can handle it. And it turns out that agent sitting on the other line is now absolutely one of my lovely gal named Teddy Hunt, one of the best agents I know in the business, and she's a wonderful friend of mine and partner, and we've really been able to help. Oh boy, I couldn't even tell you how many clients we've been able to help now, and that actually gave me the confidence to switch. So when people ask, when did you start originating, I say September of 2012, because that's when I met Teddy Hunt. She put her trust into me and started referring clients, and
wow.
I started talking to some agents and stuff through that confidence. And she's like the mama, the second mom of my life, right? She always is like, Aaron, you're the best. You should go talk to every agent. You're the best. And I'm like her kid or something, and that's what started it. The next year, I think I did like $6 million in business, and then it went to I want to say, so that was 13, 14. It went to 14 million. 15 was 18, or no, I'm sorry, 15 was 27, and then 16 we just finished, and that was 44 million. So from meeting Teddy in September to now, year after year, and that's one thing I'll say about just how my dad has trained us, or how we go after business, and how really the company we work for, all those elements, I've almost doubled, at least 50% growth every year I've been at this.
Yeah.
And I honestly think it's going to be pretty much the same going into the next year. Crazy fact is, last year there wasn't a single loan officer on the Ninness team that didn't increase their business 25% or more last year.
No kidding.
Wow.
Every single person. Yeah. So that's how I got into it.
You've only been doing it 4 years?
Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
I thought you'd been doing this back since Nam.
No, I've been doing it for a long time, but never on the origination side, right? So I think the difference is I came into the business knowing, that's the difference between a Brent and myself. Brent came in and really didn't know much about mortgages at all. Had a good amount. My dad always talks about when he got into mortgages, he found out 2 months in that there was a T in mortgage. He was spelling it wrong the whole time.
Yeah.
That's just mortgage, right? So you have this lack of understanding. Whereas for me, I grew up at 8 years old going on camping trips out in the middle of nowhere back when HUD repos had one key that fit into every single door of a HUD. And my dad was a HUD loan officer and had that key. So we would always go out if we were in an area and needed to kill some time. He'd pull out his listings of HUDs in the area, and we just go check out these
No
properties
way.
that were destroyed. So,
cool.
you know, when people talk, what's a HUD property? Here I am, 8 years old, I know it. So I had a really good upbringing of just knowing that stuff, and then in becoming familiar with mortgage insurance and all these terms, and my dad actually kind of explained a lot of it to us. So when I got that opportunity, I knew what I was doing. It was like a put me in coach. You know, I've been practicing this whole time, and I seized the opportunity. And actually, the very first thing that happened, the second agent I met was a wonderful man named Tom Busby. And Tom actually was selling my personal home, and we went under contract on Friday, and unfortunately he had a heart attack and passed away that next Monday. And so my very next agent that I worked with, who was a good mentor, a good friend, I lost like almost immediately into the business.
Wow.
So it was just all kinds of stuff going on in that. But
Yeah, it's funny. When I started with you guys, I knew just about nothing about mortgage, and I'm on the other side of the table from you all, where I did get a college degree, and I got a finance degree, actually, and now I'm working in finance, but they certainly never taught us anything about this industry. It's so funny to me now looking back that this is a industry where you can do, or a job that you can do very well for yourself. You can have freedom, and they don't really talk about it, even to a finance major. And maybe they talked about it a little bit. I wasn't the I didn't pay
it's
attention
not
that much
surprising.
in school, but
It's
I
weird that
don't remember
the-
hearing anything about
The
this being an
licensing
option.
requirements are not that stringent. I mean, I got my license in 2 months, and I feel like it should be a 4-year degree to be dealing with people's lives and money.
you know what though, this is there's a couple points here. I'd say this is a good example of like the journeyman mentality, right? What they need to do is really create 2 licenses. We need to have a junior loan officer and a loan officer license.
Totally.
Right now we throw around the term senior loan officer. Really, a senior loan officer is someone who's typically been in the business 6 years or longer, I believe. That's what I think someone had told me, maybe my dad or something along the way. A junior, though, should have so many loans where they have co-signed off on to get their license, right? They should be part of 200 transactions before they become loan officers and really get them out there, because you as a junior LO saw way more deals than a junior LO for like the previous company you worked at, where it was a fraction, right?
Sure.
And that would give us the ability then to let folks go get an education on the basic requirements, get their junior LO, and then I can give them deals, but so can other folks inside the office, and really invest in these guys to jump in and take over deals, learn the business, and then get their real license. But on a given day, what % would you say you use of what you learned to get your license in our daily work?
Close to zero.
I mean,
I was
it's
gonna say,
a
I was
0
gonna say
3.
1 or 2.
Yeah. I mean,
Real close to zero.
yeah. So I mean, it's a point. You know, in some ways, it shows that someone has a brain enough to study, take a test, and pass. And the other thing it does really well is ensure that that person isn't a scumbag. Previous to licensing coming in back in 2010, right, is when licensing really got in. They actually, and that's back when I was getting my license, one of the case studies they had in Colorado for why licensing was so important was a complaint that was received at the Attorney General's regarding someone who refused to meet him. He would only meet him at their house. You have to come to my home to drop off documents. If you want to sign, you have to come to my home. They're like, well, I'm way up north. Nope, you got to come down. Turns out it's because he was on house arrest with an ankle bracelet, so he couldn't leave his home.
Oh, wow.
That's the type of stuff we're trying to flush out, right? And I've worked at companies where we've had to have the tough conversations with employees about, hey, you done messed up and you can't be here anymore. Or the regulatory agencies have said, you messed up. And we're not talking bar fights, things like that. They understand that sometimes you have too many drinks and, things get out of hand. These are offenses that actually you look at that at the end of the day and say, hey, that person shouldn't. But even more so, we still are allowing folks with 2 bankruptcies and 3 foreclosures to get licensed. And that's a practice that needs to stop.
Really?
Yeah, absolutely.
I wouldn't have thought so.
Yeah, there's
Don't they do some kind of financial check on those?
there's no credit check. I mean, there's a credit check to see if you're like outstanding, but it's not really for the purposes to see like,
Really?
you know, did you let 25 properties go?
Wow.
You know what I mean?
I was wondering about that credit check when I got licensed. I didn't know what it was for, really.
Yeah, I mean, they look at how you are financially. I think what they look at is more a shorter time, though. Like, I want to see now is someone paying their bills, because I can't trust. And really what comes down to for a bank, and this makes, going back to your, like, I understand what underwriters are thinking of, it makes sense, right? Should I be trusting someone to lend hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars when they are paid to do so? Meaning, do they have financial interests in such a way that they would make poor decisions on whether or not a loan should go through, or do they go into fraudulent activities or something like that? Whereas, you know, that's the cool thing. As you start to get more successful and you have good business, at the end of the day, you can talk to that client and say, you know what, it's not about a commission. You're not ready to buy a home. Like, this is not a good decision for you. Give me 6 months of paying your bills on time. Get some money in reserves, you know.
I wonder if we'll see, you know, this is something that can change state by state. You know, everybody kind of has their own state licensing. I wonder if some states
38
will
are all the
start
same now.
implementing.
Yeah, so we're on a uniform testing now. So 38 states have adopted the same program. So we've made good progress on that.
Yeah, it's one of those things too where you never know how it's going to work out in practice. With the real estate license here, you have to hang your license under a broker for 2 years. Is that right?
Managing broker, yeah.
Managing broker.
I think it's 3 years now.
3 years?
And then a certain amount of transactions. Well, I'm sorry, transactions isn't part of it. Again, that's one of the items that we're discussing with the sunset reviews for the state of Colorado is, are there going to be a minimum amount of transactions? Because one of the issues is there's folks who have sat on their license for 3, 4, 5, 6 years, have virtually no business to their name, and then they say, all right, I'm a managing broker, I'm going to start hiring folks and advising them.
Yeah.
Ha!
Wow.
Well, and you know, we definitely know a few of the Teddy Hunts and those out there who do a great job, but we also all three know plenty of realtors who get out into the business and they go to work for someone, and that managing broker, you know, isn't even really there. You know, it's really an industry where you can get in and really have very, very little guidance, and I guess that is something they're looking at to put some more emphasis
They
on
want
this
to,
year.
yeah, because the managing brokers seem... Dora feels that the managing brokers are not really in that managing role. And that when you become a managing broker, you have to understand really what you're taking on. You have a responsibility, especially with newer agents, to be there for them. You have to have office manuals. I mean, these are things that we're talking about to agents, and I wonder if some of them sit there. You know, maybe they'll come to our classes this year, though, and we'll have one or two folks who sits there and says, I'd love to have I'd love to be a managing broker, and then listen to us and say, maybe I won't, you know.
Yeah.
And that could be the intended purpose, but I don't know. Here's the other thing, too, right? I think they say 90% of the business in Colorado is done by 2% of the agents. So
Wow.
that would be about, I think 2%
Really?
of the agents is, well, we've got 24,000 agents licensed in Colorado. So you're talking about 500 agents in the state do 90% of the business. You know what? That actually sounds like a number that isn't that far off.
Yeah.
There's a lot of agents that I know who do 50 transactions are in the top 1% of agents in America. So
Yeah.
there's a lot of folks who have probably no deals to their name.
Yeah. And it's I don't know, I personally, now being in the business, I just can't imagine I guess hiring somebody to help me through that process. If I didn't know anything about the process and I needed to hire an expert, some of the reasons that I've heard of why people choose their realtors, I'm just blown away. It's like, this is a really large sum of money here that you're dealing with, and a lot of people pick based off of, you know, things that maybe aren't the most financially sound reasons for choosing such a big financial decision in your life.
Yeah, and it's also important to have someone who is willing to step up and tell you you're making a bad decision. And that takes a salesperson who has the expertise and knowledge and confidence to relay it in a way that you're not telling someone, hey, dummy, listen up. you're truly looking out for their best interests. Good examples of that are when you hear these people say, well, if you don't want to spend the money, you don't have to do a sewer inspection. Mm-hmm. Well, I'm sorry, folks. If I were an agent and I had any home prior to 1990, I'd say, guys, if you're not going to, I'm paying for it. We're going to get you an inspection on the sewer. Like, there's no way around it, And for those folks who don't, here, and it just kills me to think about. Here you got someone who has spent every dime, and we see these folks. They've spent everything on their down payment getting into a home, and that's awesome. They saved up for that, and now they saved $150 to not check out the sewer, and it does go bad. And that's a $5,000, $10,000, $15,000 expense. Could you find someone who said, I went bankrupt from not getting a sewer inspection? You know what? You probably could. You could probably find someone who said, I went into foreclosure because of a bad sewer.
Oh, that's
and, yeah, absolutely. It's just not worth it. It's the same thing for me, and this could be like the craziest thing to say, but people who don't vaccinate their kids. Like, for me, I've heard the stories about it, but I'm sorry. I'm going to get my kid polio vaccinated, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe it should me.
I got the flu shot yesterday.
Do you got a sticker? Or maybe a Mickey Mouse? Do you have a Mickey Mouse Band-Aid?
No, man.
Did you get
they
one?
gave me Lion King.
A Mickey Mouse Band-Aid?
No. Flu shot. We can't have you out of the office for too long. We can't have you getting the flu.
I did not get a flu shot, and actually my wife would kill me if she knew, because I'm pretty sure I told her I did.
Oh, dude.
But
she's gonna check your
on the other note, I do get Mickey Mouse bandages often. Anytime I get a boo-boo, so...
That's good to know. Have you ever had the flu?
Oh, God. Yeah.
Like the real flu, or just a cold?
No, I've had, the shakes, I'm not impervious to flu. I mean,
all right. I tell you so personally now, I feel like when I'm talking to people about the flu, like some crazy PTSD guy or something. I got the flu like 4 years ago, and it was the only time I ever actually had, like the flu, and it was like one of the worst 3 days of my life until I finally went to the doctor. And at that time, I actually didn't have health insurance. So I decided to try to tough it out, and then I finally went to the doctor and was kicking myself so hard for not having done that days before. But that was like such terrible days. I don't know. I think that we throw around flu for cold interchangeably, but they're definitely not the same thing.
Yeah. I guess, what's funny about that, though, when you talk about experience, like, I just could have kicked myself, what I mean? It reminds me of anyone who's spent a lot of time outdoors has those same moments where, like, you find yourself in just awful predicaments, right? Like, backpacking, you are days away from where any transport is, and it's dumping buckets, and it's cold, and that the bag is getting heavier because your sleeping bag is just soaking up mountains of water, right? Like, this is gonna be the worst night. And then, like, at the same time, like, the next day, you wake up and, like, you're chilling and then the sun comes out. It's like a baby blue day and it's beautiful and you have the best fishing in the world or something. Like, it always turns around just like that.
True.
That's very true.
Was it the darkest part of the night is right before the day? Is that what it is?
It is.
Yeah,
well,
it is.
Also, misery loves company, so it's always nice to talk about, like, that's the thing is war stories, right? It's no different than talk about loans or anything else. It's nice to commiserate with people on things that you've seen, whether it's the flu you wish you never had, the hailstorm you backpacked in, or the client who bought an RV 3 days before closing. There's always a story there that everyone kind of looks at and says, yeah, it could be worse.
What's the craziest thing you've seen lately? And I know it's crazy because we were talking about this before the podcast, but what's something crazy you've seen on a loan lately?
Oh, man. I think, if there's one takeaway, like if you were a real estate agent or if you were a consumer listening to this, I'd say if the one thing I can impart about my knowledge is to pretty please understand how many third parties are involved on our side. Like, as a consumer, you're going to deal with an inspector, you're going to deal with a real estate agent, and you're going to deal with a lender. And then all these other influences, and just the sheer fact of how many people touch a loan is,
Scary,
there's
really.
I went. Yeah, it's kind of. I don't think many consumers know that when they call Aaron Ninness and say, "Aaron, I'd like to have a loan for, I'd like to have a loan for a new home," which you can apply for at aaronninnes.com. No, but honestly, I don't think they realize that Aaron Ninness has 3 assistants, and then a processor, and then there's an underwriter, and then there's an appraiser, and then there's your insurance agent. It may be someone verifying rent, and maybe your bank employee. How many hands are actually touching the information that goes into it? And at the end of the day, there are things out of our control. So the craziest thing I've seen is we have a client who needs to pay off just a tax bill. No big deal there. However, the IRS shut down their system on the 23rd of December for New Year's rollout of like new software or something. At which point they said, we're closing December 23rd on the ability to get a payoff. Will be available sometime early 2017. That's the time frame they give, is early 2017. And like, I feel like it's one of those biblical moments, right, where in Genesis it talks about how, a minute to you is like, or a minute to you is like an hour, or like 1,000 years to God. I feel like that, anytime in early 2017 would be like anything up to June 30th.
Yeah,
would be early,
I don't know that the sellers will really be that interested in waiting for early 2017.
I'd say probably not.
Yeah.
One thing I would love to hear is predictions. 2017 predictions. What do you think is going to happen? In general, it could be on anything too, because I'm just intrigued. We saw so much change at the very end, like in such a small amount of time.
Since 87, was it? Or what year was it?
Well, and that's only a part of it, right? I mean, as us, like I look at in my life, I've only seen a handful of elections, and certainly only a handful of elections I can participate in, right? And here we had one that I could have sworn that if I didn't watch, I would have just woken up and we would have had a Hillary Clinton presidency, right?
I thought that for sure.
Absolutely, that's how I thought. Again, we're very purple here, so our feedback in our communities and stuff is very much that. It was leaning that way. However, here we are, we wake up, there's Trump, and then the market changes, right? We go from this super bullish run on the treasuries to now extremely bear. We're nosediving. Rates have moved, I think, probably about 75 to a full point, 0.75 to a full point at this moment. So if you were at 3 1/4, you could be at 4 1/4 on a govy. You could be at 4 1/2 on a conventional, somewhere in there, depending on it. Maybe not so bad, but and here we are going into this new world. Rates are different. Feds change the rates. We have no idea what the outlook looks like, and business is changing for us. Right? We went from seemingly this purchase world, or this purchase refi world, where you could, if you ever needed business, it was a call away to clients, and you could always improve not only their rate, but remove mortgage insurance in this market that's moving fast, all these elements. And now we're into 2017, and we know it's a purchase market. We know that that's how we're going to be able to create business and get things going. But we also don't know what all these regulatory different changes are going to be made. We lost oil in Colorado. Oil could be coming back, all those elements. So in general, what would you say your guys' thoughts are on 2017? Like, what do you think is going to happen? What do you see? Business, life, whatever.
Gosh, well, I personally am pretty bad at, as you both already know, but paying attention to the news and economics. I usually depend on Aaron for all of my economic forecasts moving forward. So, man, for me, I feel like I look on much more micro level, just looking at changes for us. And, we just hired somebody new yesterday, actually, on our team. So I have been spending so much time thinking about just on our small little level of our team, where we're going and what we're going to be doing for 2017. I definitely would be talking out of turn if I gave any opinion on what I actually thought was going to happen.
That's what I'm looking for, though. So that's what John wanted to talk about, because you're what you think is going to happen is that level right there, right? All of us kind of look at it, and maybe that's like my position. My job is to make sure I know what's going on there, so I can try and educate you guys and get you the best products, the things to make you successful. But if your world is your guys' business, your new employee, then So based on you hiring a new employee, is that that's really a refinement of processes, right? This is to perfect, to be able to give clients better service.
Absolutely, and I think it's also trying to get him out more and me out a little more. I think we both need to be out, networking, meeting people more as well. So that's also a change we want to see.
And doing this, man, I gotta tell you, like, it's fun talking to people. I've been listening to podcasts for, gosh, it's
Years.
been at least 6 years or so, and I listen to them for hours a day, man. I love them, so it's fun. I love conversation as well, so it's a sweet thing to do to get to do this. So this is exciting for 2017. This is obviously a new change for us. So we're doing a lot of different things moving forward, and hoping that people stay excited about home ownership as opposed to renting. It's not for everyone, but for the people that do want to own, it's an exciting thing. So I hope that continues. I think it would, regardless of if it was Trump or Clinton.
I think it is.
But
I hope we see a lot of young folks like ourselves. No one sitting in on this conversation is old. I'm probably the oldest at 32. I'm not sure how old Dylan is, but I figured, he looks charming and whatnot. I hope we see a lot of young folks coming into the business in all facets. I hope we get to see a lot of new young talent coming into the real estate world, and maybe this is a rebirth of our entrepreneurial spirits. I feel like there has been a definite shortage. I can't think of many folks I look at that are just slightly older than me, someone that I would have looked up to and been like, they've been killing it, since. It's just not there. But I have plenty of folks the same age as me that have really done some incredible things. I'd like to meet more of those folks.
Yeah.
So question on that. Would you advise someone just getting into the industry, like let's say it's a younger brother about to get into the industry, would you actually recommend him to get in the industry?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, this is not a shameless plug, but New American kind of has a good idea of how to do this. The reason I got into the business and I was successful was because I was given a salaried position. Now, albeit it was a low salary. The folks we hire make far more than I did when I first started working for my dad. But it gave me an opportunity to pay bills and learn the business. I think what we in the industry need to do is construct ways to build excellent folks underneath us that don't feel they are... I want to pay them well, but I don't want them to feel like money's everything. That the experience, the culture, everything that we provide is why they want to stay in there. So if I could get my younger brother into a PA job at New American Funding, learning the basics and move him up to an LOA, and then get him to be licensed, and then get him to just go to one realtor meeting a week, and then 2 a week, and then 3 a week, and then eventually he's going to be hiring his own LOA. And that's the right way to build this business. Loan officers are getting old. And I'll tell you, mark my words, appraisers, real estate agents, and lenders together. If we do have another bubble collapse 1, 2, 3, 6 years from now, I don't care when it is, the retirement rate out of our business will be staggering. Our industry has learned from the collapse to save a little. So most of the people who are doing well, the old dogs, the long in tooth, are saving that money, they're putting it away, so when it hits again, they're done. And that's what's going to happen. If we saw a crash 4 years from now, one, just the culture, the idea of living within means, being smart with our money, really taking this as a profession, not just a fly-by-night Wall Street dream. I know my group, you guys, we're all going to make through it, and we're going to be ready for when that hits, and we're going to be successful. And when it does, the reason we're going to be successful is not only because of this business we're building, but of a natural attrition that's going to happen from 65-year-old loan officers who are still out there today doing loans out of necessity or because things are good. We may start to see some retirements just off rates. The guys who had books of business with 3,000 past clients that they could just drip on and get streamlined refinances and VA IRRRLs and conventional refinances. If they don't know how to play the purchase game, they don't know all these products that we work so hard on, the Home Readies, the Home Possible Advantages, all these sweet products, they're going to get eaten alive. They have no chance of getting my agents because I've built a good relationship built on just knowledge and execution every time. So
Yeah, it's interesting to hear you talk about it. It's cool too because forests need to have forest fires, and to get rid of that, and I think it's it'll eventually be a bit of a cleansing for the industry, and the strong survive, the good ones stick around.
It'll also force some hands, right? Because going to the appraiser side, I mentioned that when appraisers get out of the business, we don't have droves of appraisers to come in. Dylan pointed out how easy it was to get his license, right? We still have that capability now. Now that could change, but we have the ability to get people in and working without some of the compliance constraints. Appraisers have none of that.
Yeah, so let's talk for a second about that, because that was a really interesting one when they changed what you needed to do to become an appraiser.
Well, it depends. I mean, so state of Colorado's got 4 appraisal types, right? Levels of appraisal mastery, if you will. And really what we look for in our business is a certified appraiser. In order to be a certified appraiser, you need 2 things. You need 2,500 hours in a 4-year degree. Well, the 4-year degree, actually, not too big of a deal. We have plenty of people graduating school who really don't have, and that would be a viable option to get into the appraising business. Maybe they like it. Architectural engineering degree, you could see probably a couple things that fit in well for that. That being said, 2,500 hours is pretty hard to come by. And I think the term that I've used before, especially when I've written stories or articles about this, white papers or whatnot, is legacy. We've turned it into a legacy business, meaning I need to be a father handing it down to my son, where I'm paying him out of my pocket to work for me for 2,500 hours so he has the opportunity to take over my business. But what would be the justification in me as a business owner going out and saying, all right, I'm going to hire a bunch of people at $15 an hour to help me on appraisals? Okay, well, let's quantify. What is that help? You can drive that person around with you so you can run around and take some photos for you or measure for the sketches of the home, but you still physically have to visit every single property. You're still signing off on every report. They can give you the comps that they think are best and the adjustments, but you're still going to have to review those. How much time can you actually save? Now, over years, you could develop a person to really get you there. But over years, you've already achieved your 2,500 hours. So we've made it so unrealistically high, you cannot get anyone into that position. And if you do get someone into that position, it's so unrealistically low that you cannot get profit out of that human before they would achieve the hours. It's this no man's land of no ROI. There is no return on your investment in any way, other than maybe just wanting out of the goodness of your heart, seeing your business pass on to someone, or, like I said, legacy. That's it.
That's crazy. 8-hour days, that's 310 8-hour days.
Yeah, right?
Wow.
I mean, you're talking, but see, in a year, I can't teach you enough in a year to where I could have enough orders come through me. Let's say you're doing 30 appraisals, 60 appraisals, 2 a day. 2 to 3 a day is what that average out to, right? You're doing 60 appraisals times 12, so 720 appraisals. There's no way in 720 appraisals I could teach someone enough, because you would be, you gain as you go. So by the time you got into the good stuff, they'd only have 60 appraisals left to review for choosing comps before 2,500 hours go out. Hey, I could start signing off on appraisals. It's a tough predicament.
Well, but don't you also have to have a 4-year degree now?
For certified, you do. A 4-year degree is there. You can become an I want to say it's an associate appraiser with a 2-year degree, and then there's a base appraiser license or a junior appraiser that is no requirement. That's just a basic. I think to even do the preliminary tasks we discussed, you may even need the premium. Don't quote me on that, but I know it's there. And then there's one above certified, which is a supervising appraiser, which doesn't give you any extra abilities to, I mean, all that does is mean that you can have appraisers working for you. I think supervising appraisers are really just a fancy licensing term for someone who can go out and become an AMC.
Okay.
Where they have,
that makes
you know,
sense.
it's some type of chief appraiser on their staff that handles.
So you have to be the third level to do appraisals for NAF for our company, right?
Well, I mean, I think what you're really getting into though is that's an agency requirement, right? We to sell a Fannie, a Freddie, a Ginnie Mae, to pool those as secured loans and
Okay.
MBSs. The same guidelines of how we do DTIs and AUSs and all that. I think when you get to appraisers, you just get that you got to have a certified appraiser.
Yeah. Okay. So to do a Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac appraisal, you have to have certified. So for a certified here in Colorado, is it 4-year?
4-year degree and 2,500 hours. Yeah.
Which is so crazy, and they just changed that to have the full college education. What, within the last year and a half? Is that
A couple years ago is when it
Couple
went
years
into
ago.
effect. But we also didn't. I mean, this was born out of the world of things that happened in the economy and whatnot. Here's the problem: is what happened to what I said is going to happen on this next crash did happen to appraisers. The average appraiser going into the crash was like 62 years old. And when everything fell apart, a lot of people just retired. And it's no different on to why we have an issue now, right? So here we are in Denver. If we want appraisal, you got to pay top notch for it, and you're going to wait a little bit. And specifically, FHA are harder than conventional. And people say, well, why is that? Well, FHA loans require, if there's a crawl space, you got to have a photo of the crawl space, which means that appraiser is going down into the crawl space to take a photo. You need to show a measurement of how much insulation is in the attic, which means that appraiser putting a ladder down, climbing into an attic to measure that and take a photo. Conventional loans don't have that. You know what I mean? So that's what. So all of a sudden we lost all these appraisers in the downfall. Then slow, because laws are slow, we create this new licensing requirement, get that passed, and it goes into effect. But we had already lost so many that now it just stopped. It confined it. Well, no one cared because at that point we were only 2 years into the recession. There's no issues now. Okay, so we haven't started really piping. Well, now it's 2014, 13, 14, 15. Ding, 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 and things are going. Laws haven't changed. And the requirements haven't changed because, at the end of the day, Fannie, Freddie, FHA, VA, USDA, they're all congressional. And you got to get everyone on board with the idea that we got to loosen up some of that, right? Those are some of the restrictions that are behind the scenes that consumers don't know. And maybe that is one of the benefits of having more of a red type of government in place is stripping this away. And we know that President-elect Trump has said many times he wants to strip away the CFPB's power, and there's a lot of these things that put this in place. Could that positively impact us in those turn times and abilities to get people? Maybe that is truly one of the benefits of having that is getting a little bit more action. Who knows?
So, do you have any opinion on? Was it he said he was going to put Ben Carson in charge of HUD?
Yeah, I have a lot of opinions.
You don't say. You don't say.
Ben Carson, without getting too political, I think the biggest concern there is he doesn't really have much of a housing background. He's also stated on several occasions that he feels that it becomes a state-style government when we have Section 8 housing and affordable housing stuff available. It just concerns me when affordable housing gets put onto the back burner. At the end of the day, we have to remember there are women who are raising kids because their husband left them, and that really is how they're going to get support. And I think if we're going to rely on churches or nonprofits to pick up that slack, we're not really living to the American spirit. That is, and for me, I'll gladly pay. And I get those calls now, all the time of my rent's going up. I can't afford that. Can I try and buy a home? What assistance do we have? I get those calls. With folks who are disabled, both veterans and normal folks. I had a client who was a post office worker, and does not get standard disability. She was hit by a car while walking her out, and I'll tell you, that disability, none of us could live on that. And she bought a house on it and is living successful today. But we had to get some Section 8 vouchers for her. There's a need for it, so there's that. Now here's the benefit: is FHA is overfunded. We're supposed to be keeping it at 2% funding rate, which means that basically we want to have 2% of every dollar we're lent in savings for defaults. We're over 3% now. So what we could be seeing, and we've already drafted it as a community to the FHFA, concerning the guidelines for FHA loans, and we want to reduce the annual mortgage insurance premium. Right now it's at 0.85%. If we can get it down to 0.55, that's what it was when I got into the industry. That's what it was through the crash. Instead of 1.75 in upfront financed mortgage insurance, it would go up to 2.25. And again, that's how it should be. We should be financing more upfront and alleviating costs. The reason we do that is the same reason why I could look at a buyer and say, folks, I'm going to give you a higher interest rate today, but you don't have mortgage insurance monthly, which means that you have a lower payment. We call that lender-paid mortgage insurance, and it's an effective way to mitigate costs for someone who's going to be in a home 8 years or less on a 5% down. I mean, that's the facts. That's the same thing we're doing on FHA. FHA is not a permanent solution. But right now, we have folks that are good quality borrowers who can't get a conventional loan, who are putting 20% down and are being forced into a loan that has 4 life mortgages. Or at 20% down, it would be for 11 years. I mean, you're talking about someone who's paying down that loan to a 30-something% loan to value maybe, before their mortgage insurance would naturally fall off. That's a problem. So, having those requirements moved, which I think you have a much better chance of with a Ben Carson in place.
Yeah, man. I guess so. You seem like you're kind of in favor more of the higher upfront. Which would you advise people that they should plan on living in the house longer or keeping that loan for longer?
That's the point of it. What we're doing as an industry right now is refinancing people who just refinanced, and it's become a kind of weird game. With a rising rate environment, we need to give people an opportunity to get into a home with little down, who may have some blemishes on credit, but still get into a product that's not going to force them to make the decision that if they ever want to get that mortgage insurance off, they're going to have to refinance into a loan that potentially has a higher rate. Right now, I'll give you a 4.25 FHA, 4%, 3.875. I don't care where it is, but at the end of the day, my mortgage insurance is 0.85. So if I give you a 4% loan at 0.85, I'm giving you a 4.85 or greater APR. That means that if I'm saying, hey, with your credit and stuff, you finally qualify for conventional, which is your first opportunity to get mortgage insurance off your loan 3 years from now. And by then, the feds truly did raise rates all the way up to now you're at 5.5. There is no net benefit. But if you're a consumer that makes more than $100,000, you don't get a write-off mortgage insurance. So now, you know what I mean? It's this big long out look that says, I don't think 5 years from now we're going to really appreciate what we did to folks. Was it a little heavy? Is that a little heavy?
No, you had me the whole time until the very end, and I don't know. I don't know if I followed exactly.
Oh, my point is that right now, someone gets into a home and they get the interest rate they're getting and they get permanent mortgage insurance. On a conventional loan, you pay a higher rate, but lower mortgage insurance, blah, 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 but it also falls off. The thing is that FHA always had the upfront. That was the difference. Mortgage insurance was actually cheaper. Rates were better, but you pay this big upfront fee. Well, the best thing about an upfront fee is because it's financed in, it encourages people to stay in that loan.
Mm-hmm.
When you refinance someone, you restart that amortization in most cases. They're going to pay more in interest. They're not going to pay as much in principal. And truth is, there are folks that need to alleviate some debt out of their budget. That's fine. But it's factual that some loans may come with the risk that I've lowered your payment $150 a month, but you also lowered how much you're paying towards principal on your loan, $130. So you're really only saving $20. $130 of that was actually going into the bank, into your savings account called your home. and we just kind of restarted that. So I think by getting in line now, the ability to get some of that drawn off so that these folks can sit on that loan and really focus on paying it down and know their mortgage insurance falls off, and it's a safe asset for us as Americans to be backing as an FHA loan. That seems like a longer term, and then stop this refinancing. Let's focus on people getting into homes and not just trying to get to the lowest payment and restart in the lowest payment. It's like the deferring of student loans we talked about previously. That's what people are doing. They're almost deferring their payment out as far as they can.
Yeah.
And this would be a system that encourages them to stay there, keep paying their bills, and there's a reward down the road if you stay there 5 or 6 years. Your FHA mortgage insurance is going to fall off, and you're going to save that money every month.
Yeah.
And having a suitable loan that someone else can sell, right? That's a whole asset with a loan assumption.
Yeah. My question is, FHA does give some kind of refund of that upfront mortgage insurance that you pay. You have to at least...
But only going to FHA to FHA.
Yeah, FHA to FHA is your only way to get that.
How does that work? What does that look like? So let's say 6 months, 6 payments in to a loan.
I think it starts at 80%.
80%.
The max you can get back is 80%. In fact, I found it a couple times. We've got FHA MIP refund chart. I think, if you just Google like FHA MIP refund chart, the first thing that pops up is a mymortgageinsider.com, and that's the one I usually go to. So 1 month after closing is 80%, 2 months is 78, 76, 74. So it drops by 2% every payment of what you get for refund, and that's only FHA to FHA. So there isn't. Here's what you have to understand is when you pay a 2.25 point up front, what you are doing is no different than if I gave you a conventional loan at that same rate and you paid a point and a half. Now it's more expensive, right? But FHA rates are typically low. They're always lower, actually, than a conventional loan. I found very few instances. So if your rate today was 3.875 or 4 1/4, and the mortgage insurance was the same in all things, you have to be about a 700 score or less, right? We talked a lot about this. 700 score, 720, somewhere in there is where you draw the line. Now, take that away. Take your person who is a 680 credit score, 675, something where you don't have the cool programs to fit in, right? So now my rate on a FHA is still that same, 3.875, but for conventional, we moved to 4.5. Okay, well now for a 4.5 loan to buy down to 3.875 would probably cost 2.25. And the mortgage insurance for a 3.5, 5% down conventional loan at a 675 is nowhere close to 55 basis points. Now you can make a mathematical decision with pros and cons to each based on how long you're going to live in a home. And the reward is for those FHA buyers who say, we want the dream of home ownership, and we also understand that we're going to keep our asses in this home for 5 years. There's a true benefit now for choosing that loan, and we're no longer using it as what I would consider as a Band-Aid. I have no more options for you, so I'll slap you into this FHA because, hey, we can get it done.
What do you think will happen with down payment assistance programs, at least on a state level? Here in Colorado in 2017, you think things will stay about the same? Those specifically like county-specific second mortgage programs?
I think, well, yeah, so the reason you're going to still have county stuff is simply in the fact that all these guys get HUD funds. HUD sends out, they provide, HUD provides funds for low-income programs. That's legislation that's put in place to assign our budget to help these folks. Could that change? It could. I don't think people are going to attack that. Not that specific portion. Where you get into interesting situations would be like Westminster here in Colorado. My understanding is that they use funds that were supposed to be for housing, I guess for infrastructure of some sort, and have been blacklisted for being able to use other funds for homeownership opportunities, which is why they kind of don't have anything other than statewide grants. So I think you may see some further restrictions put on things where if you don't use it exactly how they want, they kind of change, the terms. But I think down payment's going to sit around. The real thing is like these programs like a CHAFA or a Denver MMA, where they're actually loans. They're increasing the interest rate and using the profit from the yield spread to give back to a client as their down payment. Those are the loans that I think we're going to see more and more restrictions on, because all of those loans are listed as HFAs. HFAs are a special category of loans where the standard rules we follow of not having interest rates that are overly too high, not having too many fees, are not part of it. Okay, so we're producing loans, but you're never going to convince me that it's a solid program where I'm giving down payment assistance to someone who makes $113,000 and wasn't able to save a couple bucks. And that's the thing, is like they're overstepping some of what I think is common sense use. If you make almost 10 grand a month, you should be able to put $500, $1,000 away every month. And in their special circumstances, I get it, but these are like, they have, it's a 3-person household. It's like husband, wife, daughter. And I just remember being broke as a joke, buying my first home and eating a lot of ramen, and I still made it work, So I think that's what's probably going to be targeted the most, is people who probably don't fit into what a down payment assistance program should, being taken away. And we're seeing that today with CHAFA, right? Taking away the 2% from a 2% lender credit to a 1%, just adding in 1% that you got to find either from a seller. Because here's the other thing that they're realizing is that, going back to our streamlined refis, it's too easy for me to flip around and take that deal back out. Look, I don't have they're not going to call me back and say, Aaron, we're charging you back your commission unless someone makes 6 payments. Well, so I can get someone into a home 6 payments later, they refinance, they get into a lower rate, they save in their money, that loan's gone. Well, in 6 payments, they paid maybe $200 a month extra interest. There's $1,200. Well, they got a $5,000 grant. It's not enough time to earn back your money. They need those folks in those homes for a couple years. It's clever to me that they happened to take away the 1% credit right at the same moment that they were having a rise in rates, because this could continue to force folks to, instead of take away both 2%, 1%, etc., to be in a position where their grant is now streamlines don't make sense. If I'm waiting 6 months and 2 more Fed increases go into place, it's no longer a net tangible benefit for me to refinance.
We have a deal working basically in that exact situation where they bought the house a year ago and they're looking to do a streamline, but the rates have gone up so much where
there's no benefit.
There's no benefit.
Yeah, and that's what.
In fact,
that's
that
what
5% of principal and interest, I guess, and mortgage insurance.
Yes,
they're like right at that line. When I say within $1 of
correct.
That line.
Yeah, and that's, I mean, it's so there's many states that don't have that, right? I would wager in this market we're going to hear less and less people getting shopped by no-name brokers from out-of-state areas, because our state has this requirement that really doesn't allow them to have a benefit. Now, FHA requires it across the board, so that's FHA's rule, but only Colorado has that for any refinance, so I can't do that on a conventional, you know what I mean? Like, it becomes, I don't know, pretty interesting. We'll see what happens.
All right, man, well, I know you have to get home. It is the first big winter storm here in Denver of 2017, or at least supposed to be. We'll see if it starts coming down, but it is officially rush hour time, so appreciate you coming, man.
No, it was great. We'll have to do this again when you guys have another spot full or available.
Yeah, man, maybe we'll make it before every snowfall thing or something. Who knows?
Well, you'll go the whole summer without me.
All right, man. We'll see you
guys.
soon.
Appreciate the time.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Transcending Lending. For more episodes, subscribe on YouTube or your favorite podcast app, or visit our website at transcendinglending.com. Tune in next week for another great episode.